welcome, Janet. Janet Heartson is a dear friend of mine. And I met Janet last year when I had ruptured a disc in my back, and I was referred to her by a friend. And I I started actually doing a 1 day journal on my ride home from Janet's, and I've been listening to them again. And you just shifted my world, which is what I needed around pain and around like releasing pain. And like I just felt so held by you and your sound bath and the integration that you offer afterwards that I wanted everyone to meet you. So I had Janet helped me do a women's circle, and she led a women's circle with a group of us. And Eleanor was there for
Yes,
that.
it was wonderful.
Yeah, and we're just so happy to have you. So I'd love if you would like to just add any introduction for yourself of how you would like to present to the world.
Yeah, that's always complicated because there are so many aspects of me, right?
Right.
As there are for all of us. So the Virgo part of me, and I have many planets in Virgo, is a scientist, a researcher, and I love information. And I love organizing it in different systems. Um, and my particular information that I really enjoy is humanity and what's happening in our heads and our bodies and all of that. So I've got a certification in kinesiology, NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming, which is a kind of psychology that helps you make some quick changes in your behavior and your thinking. Some really elegant techniques to do that. I'm a Reiki master, and I love energy work. And I'm probably forgetting a couple of other things. I have a master's degree in spirituality and psychology because I don't think you can really be well psychologically unless you find your connection to spirit in some way.
Mhm.
That mostly sums it up.
Yeah, that's
Well,
beautiful.
I was also born psychic. And I'll tell you some of the stories that I experienced of being more than a body.
Mm.
Yeah.
Can you delineate what psychic means versus some of the other terms, medium, and what does it mean for you to be psychic?
Well, I am a medium. Uh, it's just that I can't control when beings come through. It only comes through in a therapeutic setting. Like I don't advertise being a medium because it really is only consistent when the client that I'm working with needs it and the spirit needs it for completion. And
Hmm.
so there's a conglomerate of things that have to go together to make that work. I'm also, well, Virgos are pretty into truth. And so I'm I have a little inner lie detector. And people aren't often, they're not usually consciously lying, but sometimes they deceive themselves. And so that's one way that I can nurture someone towards where they really want to be going and what they really want to be talking about. Because oftentimes clients like just skirt around the issue, and I'll help them go more directly into it with that little lie detector inside.
That's what that is.
And then I also have, well, there's clairvoyant, which is seeing things. There's clairaudient, which is hearing things. There's clairsentient, which is knowing things. No, I'm switching them. It's feeling things. And then claircognizant, which is knowing things. And so I'm not clairvoyant. I don't normally see things. I sometimes hear messages, but mostly I just know what I know, and I won't be able to explain that. to someone, but I just have this inner knowing that's really strong and can guide me with my own being and my relationships, whether it's clients or my husband.
Mm.
Yes. So useful everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting right into it. I mean, I already have so many questions, but I'm like, I'm like, ooh, yes, ooh, I love that. Oh my gosh.
Tell me more.
Tell me more.
Teach me your ways.
Yeah, that's right. Well, one question I have is when it comes to like Claire, I guess intuition and psychic abilities and that like knowing and spirituality, how are the two of them connected for you?
Oh, that's an interesting question because I can't see how they could be disconnected.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the root of the question, I guess, is like, well, so do you attribute your knowing to your connection to spirit?
Yes.
Yeah.
And and I work always, every day, every moment to be as clear as I possibly can. To ask myself, is this my stuff? Am I projecting? Or is this what I'm perceiving on the outside? And I have all these little tests to figure out. That's one reason why I learned kinesiology, because I can self-test. And
Mhm.
that gave me the confidence to realize, oh, yeah, I'm accurate. This is
Mm.
working.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay.
So, so then there are clearing prayers, for instance. May any energy that's not mine be given what it needs and sent on to the light.
Mm-hmm.
So if I feel like ambiguous about a message or an idea, then I will clear myself to just make sure. Because, as an empath, that's also psychic, right? As an empath, I'm picking up information all the time. And sometimes if I'm tired or hungry or whatever, confused, it might stick to me until I release it, just like it would stick to someone else.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and when I think of like clearing our energy, I think of, for me personally, a lot of it has to do with the food I'm putting into my body and like what I'm listening to on the TV and all of these different
Consumptions.
yeah, consumptions. And one question that's coming to mind right now is for anyone that's, embarking on this journey, which I feel like I was sharing with Jesse and Eleanor right before we started our conversation. I feel like I personally have this kind of connection that I'm searching for a path to deepen the connection and the knowing, because it's like I find out after the fact that I was right and that I should have trusted it and I knew and all of the things, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I just need like something to kind of be my catalyst to help me know in those moments what's actually happening and how to trust that and know what's going on. And so one of my questions is like, do you have any advice for anyone like me at the beginning of this? I guess you could say I guess I don't know if it's the beginning or the middle or where I am on this journey, but for anyone that's maybe trying to find more clarity.
Yeah, you're fine tuning.
Yeah.
You well into the journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
Yes. Sometimes giving ourselves permission to stop a conversation or tune in, just taking a moment makes all the difference. I remember I was rushing around and I just couldn't get out the door on time. So I knew I was going to be late, but I just, and I'm not a late person. I like being on time or even early. And so I was like, why am I doing this? What's going on? And when I finally got out the door, I went by an accident that had just happened.
Mm,
And I thought, that's why.
yeah.
Mm.
There was divine intervention preventing me from being on the road in that moment.
Yes.
And it was blocking my energy from my usual efficient self. And I didn't know that. So you're not always going to know that that's what's going on.
Right.
But and and I was criticizing myself for it, but then there it was. And as soon as I saw the accident, it hit me like a bolt of lightning. Of course, that's why. So that's the knowing, right? It just hits you and you're like, oh, there we go.
Yeah.
And of course, that's just a dramatic example of much more subtle things. Like I might say yes to a social engagement and be really excited about it and happy about it. But there's a part of me that's like, I don't think it's going to happen. And then later on, someone got COVID, or whatever, something will happen and it doesn't happen, and I think, oh, that's why that was there. So Saturn, you're saying how can I anticipate that, and how can I know and trust, and repetition is a thing. Just practice saying, I trust my inner wisdom. But also, you're not always going to know ahead of time. Sometimes you just have to fumble around and figure it out later.
Totally. Yeah, that's what I was hearing, is it's a practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
And on that note, on it being a practice, I wanted to ask you whether or not you feel that everyone is intuitive, and that it's just whether or not they are practiced at tapping into it.
Absolutely. I'm taking my course, Discovering Inner Wisdom and Decision Making, into the prisons. And because they're not taught to pay attention to their inner wisdom. And I'm going to help them find that place in them that said, ooh, maybe this isn't a good idea. And where that lived in their body and in their souls, and how they can tap into more of that, and how they can love what they love and move towards that, even while there's probably those inner programs inside that I can't have that, I'm not good enough, all of that. So yeah, absolutely, everybody.
Is this something new for you?
Yes, I'm just getting permission now to go in.
Wow.
Yes. Awesome work.
Yeah.
This has been your life's work. From what I've learned of you through the years, you've done these intentional things to help raise the awareness. And you shared a little bit about them in our group, but I'm wondering if you would share about more of them with our listeners.
Sure. I started out working with kids with learning disabilities, and helping them learn how to learn in their own individual ways and compensate for the issues that they had. And as I was working with them, it was more one-on-one. I would find ways to acknowledge their gifts, so that they weren't just focusing on their disability, but they were really focusing on their abilities and their wisdom, their own awareness of who they are. And even though it was different than the majority of class participants. And then I worked with women in a shelter for battered women, and helping them to understand what their last straw was, because they would repeatedly go back to the batterer. And so I would work on helping them to understand what the dynamics were that were going on, that were causing them to continuously put themselves in that position. And that's an NLP technique, to instead of waiting for your last straw, you just declare it. What's going to be my last straw?
Mm.
Ah.
And
Yes.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yes. I
it can
really
be
like
really
that.
powerful.
Yes. Yes. Right. I like that. It reminds me of declaring that this is going to be the last moment.
And I'm choosing it.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Like this is going to be that I can choose to be a different way right now
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
if I want to. But
Mhm.
that's an option.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, then you do the support services. You know, you find a place that they can live for a while. And I ran that a shelter, you know, where they could live. It was anonymous, so the men didn't know where it was, and then we would put other services in place. If they had children, we'd get childcare, and we'd help them find work, and we'd empower them in other ways. So you know, it was a comprehensive process.
Mm.
That last straw piece was an important piece.
Mm-hmm.
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 I'm so curious about your journey into this work. Was there a moment in your childhood where you feel like you were like, aha, or a moment in your life, even into adulthood, that you felt like you saw maybe the path that you wanted to take or something that impacted some choices that you made that brought you to this work?
Well, I was good at reading people
Mm.
and helping them feel at ease. I I'm a natural mediator between conflicted people. Um, I grew up in a family of alcoholics, and so my radar, because when you grow up with dysfunction, your radar gets really good.
Mhm.
So my radar was excellent. And it's not that I was at risk all of the time, but being sensitive, I didn't feel safe a lot of the time. Um, so so having developed that, it just was natural to want to be a counselor or a teacher. And so
Mm.
I started down the teacher path, and then I realized that working with that big a group of youngsters was not going to work for me, and that working one on one was really much better. So then I headed in the direction of being a counselor.
Mhm. Totally. Mm.
And I'm chomping at the bit for you to tell us the story you teased us with about your, I mean, I don't want to ruin it. So if you want to start the way you want to start.
I have so many stories, but I think there's one that is pretty cool. So I'm going to start with that one, and then I'll go to my near death experience. Um, when I was 5, my mother decided I needed a nap. I didn't feel like I did. So and it was a hot day, and so I was just lying on the covers and on top of the bed and just zoning out. I think I read a couple books because I love books. And then you know that place in between awake and asleep.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very intuitive place.
Yeah.
Um, it's like the dream world is a beautiful place too. But I was in that place and I started hearing this buzzing, and buzzing is really key. Pay attention when you hear buzzing, um, because sometimes that's a indication that you're changing energy consciousness.
Mm.
Um, so I'm hearing this buzzing, and I think it's somebody sawing something in the distance. Um, and then all of a sudden, I feel this incredible burst of joy. It's just like happiness totally embraced me and took me in its arms and completely held me. It was just so amazing. And then I realized I'm not seeing through my eyes. And then I realized that the window screen was right here and that I was in the body of a fly.
Whoa.
And as soon as I had the awareness of that, I went slamming back into my body and the adrenaline, because of course, that does, when you have those experiences, it doesn't fit the worldview of what life is and what reality is. And so that's why I went zooming back, and then I forgot about that. And I didn't pay attention to it. Of course, I had no words. I mean, especially at 5, to explain that to anyone. And I had already sort of gotten the message that talking about things was going to kind of fall on ears that didn't understand it, or didn't get it. And so I was a pretty internally oriented person. And it wasn't until years later that I went, whoa. And actually, then I started having other shamanic experiences. Like I went home crying from school one day because I was so frustrated. I was learning history, and they wanted me to recite all these facts and figures around war. And I was asking the teacher, well, how do we stop it? How do how do we change that? And he gave me he was angry with me for not following the curriculum. And he ended up he had to give me a B because I earned it, but we had attitude grades, and he gave me the worst attitude grade.
Wow, because you were curious.
Yeah. So you can see why my heart was just so hurt by that, because I do like information. I do want to learn things. I'm very curious. But we were not going in a direction. I didn't want to just regurgitate facts and figures. I wanted to change the world. So I went home. I'm crying. I go out into the field because nature is my, my nurture. And I lie down in the field and I listen to the buzzing of the crickets. And that buzzing sort of permeated my being. And suddenly I went into the Akashic records. And I was asking a question and getting the answer, asking a question, getting the answer. And it was like instant connection with the all-knowing. And this petty little issue at school just disappeared. It's like, oh, that is so small compared to having access to the records. And there was joy accompanying that. It wasn't just information. It was liberation. It was freedom. It was big. It was just beautiful.
Can you describe what the Akashic records are?
Sure. Well, what I know of it is
Right.
is that
right, we know nothing. It's an experience.
Yes. So there is a unity consciousness, and in that unity consciousness, there is all information, but not information like the news we watch or something like that. It's truth. It's deep, embodied truth, and when you access that truth, it's beautiful. That's the best I can do. Sorry, Jessica.
Yeah, that's perfect. I love that we're not able to describe it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Buzzing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna listen for that.
Yeah. And I just think about killing a fly now. When that fly is just feeling pure joy. It's like, how can I kill you? Yeah.
Yeah, flies don't have egos. We are unique in that we have egos, and those egos get in our way of a lot of happiness and joy. And so, yeah, there's this purity in animals and insects and trees and flowers. There's this purity because they're not evaluating themselves all the time. Like different.
Whoa.
Yes.
Yeah, we've fallen out of touch with the laws of nature. Totally.
I had another experience. I don't even know if it exists anymore, but it was a place called Earthworks somewhere in Vermont. I'm not even sure where it was.
Yeah.
I think it's in Morrisville, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Really?
Where they build
The rocks
the rocks?
spin.
Oh no, this is different.
Oh,
So
okay.
it was a farm, and it was for people to do workshops to get back to the land and reconnect with nature. And maybe, but I thought it'd be a lot of fun, so I went, and we did some meditation, and they talked about their land and their commitment to what they were doing, and then the at the end they said, okay, now go out and go experience a flower and just tune in and meditate with it. And I did. And I was kind of skeptical. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to get anything, even after all those previous experiences. So I go out and I find this beautiful Asian poppy, the beautiful orange poppy. I mean, the head was like this big. It was just so elegant and in its full vitality. It was just gorgeous. And I sat with it, and here again was this pure joy. It was, and you know, when you connect with joy, you're also connecting with truth and beauty. It's like it's all connected, because really words can't describe an experience like that, because it's only our brains that have to quantify things but anyway, so that was an amazing experience, and that started me on the journey of exploring flower essences. And I started working with Paralandra flower essences. That's a woman down in Virginia who started meditating with her vegetables and flowers, and tuning in and seeing how her consciousness interacting with the consciousness of those plants and flowers could assist them in growing and assist them in wanting to give their essence in the process of making flower essences. And that's where I learned that you don't pick a flower, you ask if you can pick it. And, you know, that you work it with a level of reverence that nurtures both parties. And so I started making reclaiming essence flower essences, reclaiming Eden flower essences. And reclaiming Eden is the name because I believe that the fall from the Garden of Eden was when we forgot that we had everything we needed to thrive and to feel whole and healed and happy, and that the angels are there to help us reconnect. The fairies are there, the elves, nature in general are happy to share their love and wisdom when we tune in. So
Yeah.
So then, when we talked originally, I said I would share my near-death experience. Is this a good time, or do you want to do something?
This sounds perfect.
Um, my mom died when I was 17, and 3 months prior to her dying, she was on the terminal ward with a rare form of cirrhosis of the liver. It wasn't the alcohol-oriented one, but it was a different one, primary biliary cirrhosis. And they caught it late. So she's dying in the hospital. My dad is in the hospital. He's had a massive heart attack. And he's died on the table. And they revived him. And he lived another 9 years. But my mom died. And I took care of my 7-year-old brother. And we got the flu. Now, normally you just get through the flu. It's, you suffer, but you get through it. But when one is in a grieving process, your resources are really greatly reduced. You're much more vulnerable to an illness. And the aspirin that I was taking was expired. So it wasn't doing any good. So I put my brother to bed for a nap. And I go, and I'm just too exhausted and too sick to do anything. So I just go to bed. And I believe I died. And then a form came to me. At the time, I didn't know who. And I'm spiritual. I'm not religious. And so, but I do think that it was Christ that came. And because, well, anyway, he came to me and he said, "You'll be all right." And I was immediately infused with love. I mean, every cell in my body was infused with light, liquid light and love. And it was profound. It was amazing. And then I woke up and there was a thought planted in my mind. It wasn't me thinking it. Call your neighbor. And when you grow up with alcoholics, you grow up very independent. You don't ask for help because you're supposed to keep the secrets. You become very independent, and so so that was a novel thought. I hadn't thought of it before, to call a neighbor. So then I called a neighbor, and the neighbor called other neighbors, and they started checking in on us a couple of times a day, and they brought meals. And God, it's so amazing. But there was a doctor that made house calls in Wilder, Vermont, back then, and it was 1975. And he came and gave both of us penicillin shots and took our vitals, and then came back a couple of times after that, and we were fine.
Wow.
Having had that experience, made me realize a couple of things. One is that, well, the other thoughts that were planted in my mind were, it's not your time. And that's very common when someone is having a near-death experience. They'll be told it's not your time. So what that taught me is that there is a time, and I don't know what it is, but it's sort of predestined on some level. And then I also felt forgiveness. I mean, there wasn't really a lot that a 17-year-old needs to be forgiven for. But I was carrying a lot of burden, um, and a heavy heart, and that was all lifted. It was taken away,
Mm.
and it was just amazing experience.
Yeah.
The 17-year-old in me is like, yeah.
Mhm.
Mm. Yeah, it brought up a lot about how we see children in the world, and teenagers especially. I think we expect a lot of teenagers, and their ability to be an adult in the world and operate and understand, and there is so much growing still to do, and that permission and that forgiveness, I think oftentimes we don't learn that until we're older, and then we have to go through the healing process of going back and like realizing that we were innocent, and there's not really anything that we need to forgive ourselves for. And that is just such a powerful notion to remember, especially at such a young age, and to have that insight is so powerful.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And my dad had a near death experience too, and he was in World War II, um, and he would get drunk and cry, and he would say, "Janet, they were just boys like me. They were just boys like me."
Mhm.
He killed people. He had to. That was, um, but they were 18-year-old boys, just like he was, and that that boy was such a loving, sensitive boy, that it became a burden that he lived with for the rest of his life
Mm-hmm.
until his near death experience,
Mhm.
Mhm.
where he felt liberated from his self judgment and his pain.
Mm.
And he felt that there was ultimate forgiveness and love. That he would say, "There's just love. It's all love."
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And so that was a powerful thing to hear from my dad, who um, not only had physical wounds, like there was shrapnel still in his legs and stuff, but had those emotional wounds. And those last 9 years, he was happy. He goes, "Yeah, I can just sit here and listen to the birds all day."
Yes.
That's the Akashic Records.
Yeah.
We are love.
Yes. It's just love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Wow.
Whew.
Thank you for sharing those stories.
Yeah.
So then one of the questions I think we could all ask is, if I wasn't afraid of dying, how would my life be different?
Mm.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, hearing you say, that you had this realization that, or this feeling that it is somewhat predetermined after hearing that it wasn't your time, it is a powerful, like, reckoning almost to sit with, and just like concept of like, yeah, we don't necessarily, there's a possibility that we aren't really making that choice. We don't have anything to do with it. And I feel like there's kind of a conscious, like a collective consciousness coming around about death, and like grief, and how we as human beings are dealing with it and seeing it and coping with it and holding one another in that space. Um, but that is such a big question to ask ourselves, like, how would our lives be different if we weren't afraid of dying? Because my first instinct is I'm not afraid of dying. And then I'm like, you are a little bit. There are things you don't want to leave behind. And it's, it is such a massive, like, that is a good question.
I think the way I lived in my teens and 20s was very adrenaline seeking, risky, and it kind of had that reminder quite frequently of like how grateful I was to be alive, of meeting. And one time in particular, I remember getting lost in the Yellowstone woods. I had to climb a fence to illegally camp out to save what, $30. And I
Don't do this, kids.
got lost in the Yellowstone woods, and basically it was so dark. I just kept running into trees, and I just had to lay down and be like, I'm okay to die. And I came to that realization that night because the fear was so not helpful that I like moved into that space. And the next day I woke up with this just like, my God, I'm alive.
Yeah. I was never like, I was always like, I don't mind, I could die right now and that'd be fine. I just hope my dog dies with me. Like, this was my like whole MO for so much of my life until I became a mother. And then I was like, whoa. I remember looking at my partner and saying, well, I'm not so okay with dying anymore. And it was a big shift for me. It was a very conscious shift too. And so now I'm almost like at a what would the word be for that? Like
navigating.
Yeah. Asking those questions again.
Of course.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
How would your life be different? Or do you have any fear around dying?
I don't. I actually have a deep grief because I remember being an energy being and free from being in a body and free from ego and all this conflict and drama that seems so foreign to me. And just all I want is unity consciousness. And there's so much divisiveness. It's like so crazy. So there's a part of me that's very attracted to dying because I have a feeling I know what's on the other side, right? And then of course, I talk to people who have died, and I have a sense that they're liberated and they're coming back to serve a loved one that maybe they hurt and they want to help heal. But that most of the time they're just free beings and they're in soul school and they're learning and growing. And I don't feel that there's ever any judgment. I am as good a person as I possibly can. I feel like being good is important. But I do feel like we're forgiven for whatever mistakes we make because we're in this, we're mutating, we're human growth, and we're trying to grow and learn and change. And we're the only ones that have judgments on right and wrong in some ways. So
yeah. And that kind of leads me to the other question that came up in my mind, aside from how would you live your life if you weren't afraid of dying, but how would you live your life if you lifted that self-judgment? Or how would you live your life if you knew that you were loved, that you were truly unconditionally loved every single moment, that there's nothing that you could do about that was so constantly there and you just knew it?
Thank you, because you just put into words what I get to feel.
Yeah.
Because I know that if in that moment I had that unlimited love in every cell of my body, I know that that was the most true thing I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
And once you experience something like that, it never goes away. You know, you are forever changed by that. But you can also be forever changed by a conversation like this as well, because it shifts our awareness of what's real and what's true and what's possible.
Mm-hmm.
I remember you reminded me of a conversation I had with my grandmother as a child. I was in Christian school, and I asked her, Grandma, are you saved? And she said to me, no, honey, I'm not saved. And I said, Grandma, and I remember like I almost cried. I was so upset because as a child, I was taught that if you're not saved, you're going to hell. I said, you have to be saved. And she says, well, honey, I think that you just have to be good. And those words have stuck with me my entire life and have guided me through so much of my journey in religion and spirituality. And for a long time, I was so concerned about my grandmother. And then as I transitioned into a more spiritual path, I like celebrated my grandmother for those words. And it's so true, you know, we are the only ones that define. And I think this has been my hardship with religion, is that there's anyone that's like that one, this creator has created all of this to only condemn like a portion of what they've created. It doesn't make any sense to me. And it's always been kind of perplexing, but I think it really does just come back to being good. And part of me battles with what that means, because it's like, you know, when I define good, the way that I define good is not harming others, or not intentionally harming others is really the important part of it, is that you're not intentionally harming others. Because I think even if we're doing our best, we're going to hurt someone's feelings, we're going to do things that feel harmful to others. But it is this really interesting place, I think, that we're in, where we label things good and bad, right and wrong, and it's all from our own perception and our own opinion. And when it just comes from our heart. And I think that your work in the prisons is amazing, because I don't believe that those people have, like, I believe that murderers are in there somewhere, like, are kind and compassionate and good people that have just been misled and are confused and have been hurt and just like need love. And I don't know, I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to this, because I think really what it is just like kind of getting out of our own heads about our opinion of what is right and wrong and what is good and bad, and kind of seeing it as more of a like harmonious existence, and how we are trying to live within that framework. And
you remind me of I'm not going to be able to recall it right now, but a tribe where when someone steals or hurts or in our world breaks a law, they are brought circled around, and they're like poured love into, and what do you need, what are you lacking? And I just imagine if we have been so punitive for those that are hurt, and judgmental, and it's not why the addiction, it's why the pain. And here we are judging and ostracizing people in pain, people hurting. And if we could circle around and ask them what they need.
Well, I was just reading about that. I don't know if it's the same tribe, but when a woman feels that it's her time to conceive a baby, she goes under a tree and she sits and she waits until she hears the song of this being. And once the song comes through, then she teaches it to her partner. And when they conceive this baby, they sing this song. And then they sing this song to the child as the child is growing up, and the community members learn this song, and they're all singing this song, and it's that one person's song. And when that person does something that's hurtful or harmful or wrong, with quotations for those that are listening, everybody circles around this person and sings them their song so that they can remember their true essence and who they are. Because when it comes down to it, it's really that we've just lost touch with our truth and who we are at our core essence. Like, and I thought that was so beautiful. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what's my song? You know, what is my song?
I'll sing it to you.
Okay.
Well, and your song is love, and your song is love, and my song is love, and your song is love.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I had read that too, and I wish I knew the source because it is such a beautiful story.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's the word umbuto, I think, which is I think there was a race, and one kid went back and got the other kid and helped him across the finish line. No, I'm combining two stories. But it was the theme was that you don't you can't win, you can't achieve unless everybody's achieved, that everybody has to be with you, that you don't leave anybody behind.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And it's remembering that there is good in the world, that people are innately good. And I think so many of us, like, I know so many people that live in a state of paranoia that everyone in the world is, or that the majority of the world is, you know, criminal and trying to steal from you and like has the intent to do harm. And it's this, it's a totally wild place to exist, and it exists in a lot of people's realities. And I think it just, you know, it's a powerful move in the collective to remember that people are innately good and that we all are connected to source.
I think in some ways you're describing hell. I think that's we don't die and go to hell. We live here in hell unless we heal.
Right.
And we kind of create our own hell with our limited thinking.
I know. I always get so like, but is that divine order, you know? Because I like was talking to a friend of mine yesterday about palm leaf readings, and she was saying how if you have a palm leaf, it means you're in your second to last or last lifetime. And if you aren't, then you won't be called to find your palm leaf. And if you don't know a lot about palm leaves, I would suggest just researching it, because I don't want to like mess up all of the information about palm leaves. But basically, there's this community of well, see, this is why I don't want to go into it too much, because I don't want to mess it all up. But there is wisdom written on these palm leaves, and it's been inscribed here for a really long time. And they go out and they find your palm leaf and they do a reading for you, and it's a very in-depth reading. They like know your name, they know everything about you. It's really incredible. But you don't have a palm leaf unless you're in your last life or your second to last life. And what she was saying about how you only look for your palm leaf if you're in one of those lifetimes was so fascinating, because then we started talking about religion and how so many people don't find their palm leaves because they get caught up in religion and this is Satan's work and so on and so forth. And in my mind, I was thinking, right, but isn't this the life path of this lifetime? Like this lifetime, if it is indeed predetermined, would not lead us to our palm leaf. Instead, it would lead us down the path of religion, so that we don't find that palm leaf, because we're not meant to find that palm leaf yet. So when I think of this like living hell, part of it is like, are we creating that in like a past life or in this life, or is this just like part of our journey in this, say, predetermined web of lives that we are moving through in this plane? And of course, that's like a massive question that none of us really know the answer to, or maybe someone does, and I don't know who that is. But yeah, this is like the ruminating question for me over the past 48 hours is, are we choosing this, or is this just the path that's been chosen for us? And of course, it's coming up in our conversation with you today, but but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that my perception, my belief is that we do choose the lessons we are going to be learning, and the souls will be learning them with, and and so some things are predetermined there, but we have free will.
Yeah.
And so we get to make a decision that might take us longer to get to, the lesson.
We can change it.
Yeah, we can change it.
Yeah.
And I think for me, when you say the living hell piece, it's like when I am in judgment of myself, which often usually leads to judgment of others, is it's pretty constant, and the judgment itself is this contraction in my body, and I physically like contract because of the judgments, because judgments are so contractive, and that causes pain. And so it's this like not fun place to be. And that to me is the living hell, because it's like, oh, when I heal that, when I start to love myself more and, move out of judgment, there's less pain, there's more presence and joy and like, yeah, and less limitations. Yeah.
In kinesiology, there's a exercise that I do to introduce people to it, and one of the things that we do is muscle test strong or weak, basically, and then you send one person out of the room. So you have a surrogate tester that's testing the energy of a variety of people in the room. And so you send one person out of the room, and then you either send them positive thoughts and talk about positive qualities in them, or you talk about your judgments of them. And you muscle test the people that are judging, and they also go weak. And then you call in the person, if they're judging, you call in the person, and that person goes weak. And then if you are positive and compassionate towards the person, they come in and they're strong, and so are you. And so you begin to realize that we're all connected, and so what you think you're putting out, you are also taking in, and there's no separation between those. And so if I'm to be compassionate towards myself and create a living heaven, or a happy, healthy, holistic place in my world, then compassion goes out and it goes in. It's both, Anytime I have a judgment, I'm constricting, just like Jesse said, and that creates pain, whether it's emotional or physical, or both. And so that's a great way to demonstrate, hey, you have a choice about whether you feel good or bad.
Yeah.
And one of the things I learned also is, if I have a teacher, too bad I didn't know this as a kid, right? If I have a teacher and they're really not teaching me, they're not having a good day, then you charge them up, you send them positive energy, and you can actually see sometimes that it uplifts their message and it uplifts them.
Just thinking of my toddler.
Yeah, I'm passing that one
I'm like, okay, all right. This is it makes sense for so many of the things that, there's this big movement in parenting that is like gentle parenting, and what it is it's basically like when your child is acting up, you just lift them up.
Yes.
You just tell them how wonderful they are, and you hug them and you love them and you dance with them, and even if they're just like on the floor throwing a temper tantrum, or they're trying to hit you, or they're telling you they hate you, or whatever it is,
See, they're
just
good.
see they're good and lift them up. And
Mhm.
of course it can be really hard to do.
Mhm.
And the other thing that came up is like there's no denying when you feel that shift in a space of people. You
Yes.
feel it. And like even if you
Mhm.
don't consider yourself an intuitive or an empath or sensitive, you can look at the faces of people in the room and see if somebody starts sharing something that is sad, everyone in the room feels that sadness.
Mhm.
Like there's just a collective shift when even one person in the space, even if it's like a quiet shift, there's just no denying that. And I love that example. And I'm like way intrigued by kinesiology right now. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
And I think about sharing that with our kids too, so that when, like you said, when they feel like, oh, this is my day, I have to be led by an adult. Like, it happened to me the other day when Lucy needed something and I wasn't present enough for her to hear it. And that, like, oh, something you can do in the future if that happens again is just charge me up. And I can be more present for you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and with our friends and our
Mhm.
parents and all of the places we find the most challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like to teach little kids young some of the tricks to create balance. Do you want me to go through a couple of those?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. So one is like more than 3,000 years old, and a lot of people teach it in yoga. I might teach it a little differently than that, but basically it's alternate nostril breathing. So want to do it with me?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Block one nostril and inhale. Switch and exhale. Inhale, same nostril. Switch and exhale. Inhale, same nostril. Switch and exhale. Inhale, same nostril. Switch and exhale. How do you feel?
I needed that.
Mm.
Yeah, so you can teach kids that, and it'll settle their energy. Then there's like all the brain gym stuff, so you can teach them one hand on their belly button and the other hand on their brain buttons. This is called brain buttons, and they rub the brain buttons, and then they rub under the collarbones, and then they rub their tailbone.
I love that we're all rubbing our tailbone right now.
Yeah.
Can you purr?
Yeah.
The cats like it the best, right? Between the ears and the tail.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So those two are pretty powerful ways to switch energy, obviously, because you can feel it right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I think comes up probably more often than anything else in my work in my sessions with people is the divine spark, the spark of the divine correction, which is I have a black piece of paper and I put it in front of the person. And if the muscle goes weak, they need that correction. And it is that they're forgetting that they're divine, that they can't be disconnected from the divine. So I think the biggest problem in humanity is the idea of separation.
Mhm.
And you can learn all sorts of things like quantum physics and the holographic universe. And in the holographic universe, a piece of something contains the whole. Like a cell of something contains all of the information in the whole thing. And so you can't be separate from the divine, because we come from that. We've come from the divine. Just as we can't be separate from the planet because we come from the planet. So those two illusions of separation from nature and from the divine really are kind of the foundation of the problems in humanity. If we connected into both of those places, we'd be a lot better off.
Yeah, I've heard it related to that we are orphans, that we have forgotten, through the fall of religion, that we are orphaned. What do I believe in now? And it's having to strip away some of the things about religion that got in the way of our own connection with divine, but remembering that it's still the same thing, just without all of the other stuff put onto it.
Yeah, I mean, so much of our lifetime is about unlearning things that we learned that don't serve us.
Yeah.
So let's do the spark of the divine for a moment. So you just go into your awareness of your body and find where that spark lives. And then you allow it to grow and expand. And you feel the vitality and the vibration of it increase. And with each breath, it becomes bigger and more powerful and more beautiful, until it's throughout your entire body and radiates out to others. I moved kind of quickly because we're recording here, but I'm also pretty quick at going through stuff because I'm used to it. But that's the spark of the divine. And then normally I take that black piece of paper and muscle test, and normally the person holds strong. So it strengthens us to know that we're part of a unity consciousness that holds us and ties us and supports us all together.
Yeah.
That we're not orphans, that we're not separate. And we're not alone.
Right. And that to me was the definition of hell, is that separation, that
Loneliness.
Yeah. Well, just that, the loneliness that we can feel being separated from community, of course, but then but the ultimate, like that separation from source, from consciousness, and that the further and further away, the more and more separated you feel, the more hellish it becomes.
Yeah.
And the more you can treat other people badly because you don't understand that connection, that you're doing it also to yourself.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, what we do upon ourselves is what we do to others always.
Hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, Janet, this has been incredible. And my body feels full of divine cells right now, so thank you. And we usually close with what you are celebrating right now.
Oh, well, so much.
Yeah, I had a feeling.
I'm celebrating that we made it through January, which is not my favorite month. I'm celebrating that I am going into the prison and exploring what that's going to be like. I'm excited about that. I'm in a I'm in a chorus where we're singing concerning Matthew Shepard, which is an incredible piece of choral music that is painful and beautiful and goes back and forth. It's amazing. And it's the first time I've been able to sing in a group since COVID. So that's really amazing. When the harmonies are hit, it's like that's unity consciousness. That's heaven to me.
Yes.
I feel that.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I'm also celebrating. My husband put out his song in Vermont. If you haven't heard it yet, it's amazing. He made a video, and it's kind of reggae style, and it's really upbeat, and it's got people from our community in it, and it's really fun. So, and that surpassed 1,000 views. So it's going and it's catapulting out there. It's so fun.
That's
Oh,
awesome.
we should link it.
Yeah, we'll
Yes.
link it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Can't wait to hear it.
And is there anywhere, would you like to tell our listeners where they can find you?
Sure. I mean, they can go to heartsons.com, basically is my website. So it's HEARTSONS.com.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
the perfect name.
Well, that's another synchronicity. When I was 14, I wanted to name myself Heart Song.
Oh.
Get out.
Wow.
It was close, just no G, but that's okay.
Right.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Wow. I was talking with some friends yesterday and we were having like a tiny prayer circle and we were putting in our prayers and then we were joking afterwards about how you have to be really specific when you pray because, Source has a funny sense of humor and she was sharing how in a circle she had prayed for a chocolate man and she is from Mexico and she was thinking like a tan-skinned man and he had also prayed for a home and they found each other at a ceremony and he said, "Oh yeah, I make chocolate."
Whoa.
And she was like, "That's not what I meant." And her name means home. And they found each other and it's the most beautiful and funny and like
Ooh,
amazing thing. That's such a beautiful thing. So be careful what you ask for and be specific. Thank you so much, Janet.
Yeah,
It's been a
thank
real
you.
pleasure.
It's great to see you all.
Me
Yeah,
too.
me too. Bye.